You know what really annoys me? When I'm scrolling through my TikTok feed or my Instagram feed or my X feed or my Facebook feed, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm so sick of people telling me how to be a Christian. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that, do this, look at this person. It's all just tearing each other down. And I'm really sick of people projecting their own beliefs about Christ or misinterpretations or interpretations about things onto me. And I feel like if you feel the need to just constantly be pushing your ideas about Christ and your interpretations of Christ onto people, then you don't feel very secure in your own. If somebody were to ask me my opinion on things, then I can give it. But if I'm making TikTok reels just about you're not doing this enough or you're not doing that enough, I just feel like it's so disingenuous. And I think at the end of the day, it's about our relationship with Christ and our own personal worship and not projecting that idea onto people. And if people want to be so insecure about it, then that's what they're going to be. But I think it just infuriates me. It just makes me angry because it really makes me get in my head and doubt my own ability or my own worth or my own salvation if I get down too much of a rabbit hole. And honestly, it's just too much. And I'm sick of looking at it. I'm sick of hearing it. Really, I don't want some 17-year-old, some 25-year-old, somebody on TikTok telling me how to worship my Lord and Savior and how my beliefs are wrong or how their beliefs are right or how even if my beliefs are right or on par with what they have to say. I'm just sick of people telling me how to think, telling me what to do. And honestly, I'm over it. And that's why people reject Christ. That's why people don't follow Christ or listen to those who have experiences of Christ because it's all projecting onto people. They don't say, like, for example, if someone were to see how I lead by example or ask me about, you know, how did you get through this or why do you live your life the way you live? I would say because I came to Jesus, because I realize that he's my Lord and Savior. I realize that I need to move forward in things through him and trust him. But I'm not going to make TikTok reels about how this or that or this or that. And I guess maybe I'm kind of doing that in this, but this is just a mini rant. I don't know. I think I just kind of got to the point where I'm just sick of watching it, and it makes me want to just reject those who tell me what to do about it. I mean, if it pops up on my feed, you're not a real Christian if you're not doing this or that. I'm like, I'm not even gonna watch you. And like, I think before I would just get in my head and be like, well, okay, well maybe they're right. Maybe what they have to say, like maybe I'm falling short and I should improve. It's like no, so sick of people telling me these things. I'm just so sick of it. And I think I don't know. I'm just sick of engaging with that and really just like letting that into my spirit or letting that into my head and just making me feel insecure about it. But I don't know. That's it on that rant. But I don't know what else is going on. I feel like the NFL has been so weird lately. I feel like everyone's hurt or things are just so unpredictable, and I think that's the entertainment value of the NFL. I think that's the good thing about it, but it's very frustrating for for fantasy football. I feel like I'm someone who really likes to dive into like analytics and trends and see like if there's any patterns in the NFL, but anytime I follow that, I'm always like a year or too early or like something just goes completely out of the blue. And it really is a little bit of is about luck. Um, but I mean, even look at someone like Tyreek Hill. It's like he has done nothing this year. Nothing. And it just makes you think like what's going on? Maybe he's just like too busy playing victim. Maybe he just wants out of the NFL and he wants to be a social justice warrior or a social activist because he's sitting here driving with tinted windows and getting angry at the police because he's just like, "Oh, take my ID," and just acting disrespectful. I'm not going to say that everything that the police did were right, but also it's like dude, you play with fire, you're going to get burned. Like, don't be an idiot. Like, you're being an idiot. So, but then he goes on like ESPN and First Take or maybe not First Take, but he definitely goes on ESPN and these other networks, and all these like so-called journalists just fall in line and they're like, oh, I can't believe this happened to Tyreek, and watch this and watch that. And Tyreek is a superstar, and how can this happen to him? Because he's not more important than other people. Because everyone should be treated the same. And if you really care about people being treated the same, then why didn't he treat the police like he was a normal person, like he's not above them? As for the police, they shouldn't treat people like they're above other people because they're police. They're there to serve people. And service is a part of, giving up your own wants and needs for the sake of other people. And they put their lives on the line. They really do. And if you're walking up to completely pitch black windows, police, that'd be scary. On a human level, that would just be scary. And I can't even begin to say, like, what that job would be like. So I'm just going to try to respect it the best I can. I'm not saying every police officer is great. Every police officer is bad. But also at the end of the day, it is a stressful job, and it takes a special kind of person to not only attain the job itself, but also to maintain the job and withhold the job in a successful and professional manner, because it is high stress. You see a lot of traumatic things or hard things, but at the end of the day, like, the least you should get is a little bit of respect. And you got someone like Tyreek Hill, who obviously, like, does not have a good history, and does not seem, and it's not even about the history, does not seem very, just like, he doesn't show, I can't even think of the word. He just doesn't show like he feels bad about it. I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. He doesn't show like he wants to change, or it doesn't seem like that, because he had the incident with his girlfriend, his pregnant girlfriend. Then like an off season or two ago, he's punching a dude in the face. He's talking smack to people, and now this. And then it's like, I know this happened a couple weeks ago, but it's like, dude, you're doing touchdown celebrations of like getting fake arrested. It's like, dude, you're not a martyr for anything. For anything. You really aren't. Like, we've played this game before. We've seen this in the media before. It's the narrative that they want to push. And I'm really just sick of seeing it. And of all the people to like headline this narrative, or this activism, or this just whatever it is, Tyreek Hill, really? That's the person you want to lead that? And then you don't hear about it for a while. And what really makes me think, it's like, I can't tell if he just doesn't want to play football anymore, or if he's just like wants to get traded. Like, I will not be surprised at all if he just gets traded next offseason, because he doesn't seem like he even wants to play. And he's already what? I think he's like 30. And if you're like a 30-year-old relying on your speed, I'm not saying he's not good anymore, but like, dang Tex. I'm not saying he's not good anymore, but also at the same time, I'm saying like, you can only rely on that kind of talent, that specific skill set and talent, for so long. And if he's going to be your main guy and you're going to be paying him that much money, he's got to produce. So with or without Tua, like, look at Justin Jefferson right now with Sam Darnold. He's a big reason why Sam Darnold is playing the way he is. Like, you look at Doug Peterson, like a reporter before the game with the Vikings, he asked, like, why is Sam Darnold playing the way that he is? And he just said Justin Jefferson. And then you think of DeAndre Hopkins when he was on the Texans. Players like that, Calvin Johnson. It's like, if really someone is so great, then why can't they produce under any circumstance? And then it really makes you think. The Chiefs got rid of him. Now DeAndre Hopkins is with the Chiefs. Maybe that's a blessing in disguise, but I don't know. This has just been a weird year overall. I'm really surprised with how just fantasy scoring has been too, because I feel like it just hasn't been that high as scoring. Maybe it's just my league. I'm like in a 10-person PPR league, but maybe it's just not, I don't know. Yeah, like a lot of people are hurt. And yeah, my first two picks were Puka Nakua and Sam Laporta. I'll say it again. Puka Nakua and Sam Laporta were my first two picks. My team is not terrible after that for fantasy, but when you start your draft off like that, it just does not go well. And my thought process was, you know, when people have the kind of rookie years that they had, yes, there is such thing as a sophomore slump, but like they were doing like all time type of things as rookies. And I'm just like, dude, second year, like you got to produce at least at a similar level. And when Puka Nakua came up, it was between him and Kyron Williams. And I actually had Kyron Williams above him on my board, but the amount of receivers that were left versus the amount of running backs that were left at like that I would take that high, I just thought it was better to take a receiver at that point, which obviously was a mistake. And then I'd studied the trends of the past 3 years, kind of just seeing like how many tight ends score above average points per game out of all fantasy options, like top 200 or 300, I think it was. And I found that it was only one per year. So I took a look at the landscape. I'm like, okay, Travis Kelce's getting a little older. I don't think he's going to produce in the same way he has. George Kittle is a hit or a miss. TJ Hawkinson is out for most of the season. Sam Laporta had a historic rookie season or close to a historic rookie season. So I asked myself, I'm like, who is the tight end this season that I think most likely has the ability to score 20 points a game? And maybe I'm stupid, but I think if you would ask that question before the season, I don't think it's that crazy to think Sam Laporta would. And I scouted him coming out of college, and like his intangibles physically or his physical skill set isn't the best compared to everybody else, even like Luke Musgrave. Is it Luke Musgrave? I don't know his first name, but Musgrave, tight end for the Packers, total athletic freak, but you can see that he struggles in the aspect of playing the tight end position in the NFL. And that's why Tucker Kraft is doing well and Musgrave isn't. Excuse me. So you kind of look at it and you see Laporta is that guy who can do anything at tight end. He can do all the little things right. He knows how to play tight end. And when the Lions took him as a Vikings fan, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just terrible. Like, first Jameson Williams, now this, and then Christian Watson. Like, the Vikings are just trading picks for their division rivals to get weapons. And I'm just like, dude, what are we doing? But, I mean, Christian Watson has been kind of a bust so far. Laporta hasn't. But I just don't know how you don't use Sam Laporta. This is going to turn into a whole venting session about Sam Laporta, honestly, because I just don't understand. Like, I understand you're running the ball a lot, and I mean, I guess I do understand. You got Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Jameson Williams when he's not being Jameson Williams about his off-the-field kind of stuff. And then you have David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You have the offensive line you have. But it's like, especially with Goff having the kind of completion percentage that he has, and you see how like tight ends always help a quarterback, especially a young one or a physically, I guess, stunted one, you know, someone who has to stay in the pocket, like those checkdowns. I'm just like, how does this not make sense for Sam Laporta to be good? But I was wrong. And look at Brock Bowers. He's got more targets than any other tight end. And you're just like, okay, since Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers before that, all anyone could ever talk about was how tight ends take a few years to become the tight ends they become. Tight end is a hard position in the NFL because of the amount of things that you have to do, or if you specialize in something, you have to be incredibly good at it and really become a specialist in it to like garner a starting spot or a role in the NFL. So you're like, okay, Sam Laporta seems like the kind of guy who can get it right, but apparently not. So this is where we're at with the fantasy, or my fantasy aspect of things. And honestly, it's just frustrating. It's really just frustrating. So, I don't know. I don't know. I guess just moving forward, just kind of looking at some stories around the NFL, I think what's interesting, just watching the Ravens and Bengals game, that was really interesting because you look at it and, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. The announcer that's not Kirk Herbstreit, who was on NBC for a long time. He said, like, there's too many games that end like this. With a penalty at the end of the game, the refs don't want to make a call, and you're just thinking to yourself, like, this guy's totally right. So many games end like this, and it's like, especially now that there's money involved, the amount of just propaganda that is on my timeline about how, like, the refs are cheating and there's like a money line on things, and like when people lose they just want to say like, oh, it was rigged and this and that and the Chiefs are rigged, this and that. There might be a little bit of truth to it, but there's definitely not some big conspiracy about it. So, but in either way, I think he's totally right, and I'm just as frustrated because I'm a believer in the rules are the rules, no matter the time of the game, no matter what game's being played, no matter it's regular season or the playoffs or the Super Bowl. It shouldn't matter. And I think even though it would make fans angry if you made a call that called the Super Bowl and you didn't let them play through it, if it was egregious enough and it was like clear enough, yes, they may be upset at first, but when you really look at it, it's like, people can't be too mad if you're that consistent. But the problem is the lack of consistency. And I know everyone just gets mad at the refs, wants to blame the refs. But I just keep telling myself every year I watch them, just like, wow, the refs suck this year. They're terrible. And like, even as a Vikings fan, like watching Sam Darnold get his head taken off from his face mask 2 weeks in a row. And you're just like, dude, what is going on? What is going on with these refs? And I truly don't believe it has anything to do with the money line. But I think there are rare cases where it will happen. And ultimately, I think gambling really was a mistake. I really do think it was a mistake. And I just think that how are we as NFL fans and football fans going to continue to accept this, right? Like, how are we going to look at this and say like, hey, my team's going for 2 to try to win the game. Like, this is all or nothing. And if the other team's playing me and they're saying, you know what, I doubt the refs are going to call this unless it's like super, super egregious. If I foul them a little bit, I guarantee they ain't going to call it because it's the last play of the game. They ain't going to make this call. So as much as people want to argue the whole, the Ravens are playing better, or in the Bucks and the Chiefs sense, like the Chiefs are playing better. So you got to go for 2. And you're playing on the road and you're playing a better team. But honestly, like, is it better odds? If the team that you're trying to get a 2-point conversion on knows that the refs aren't going to be ticky-tacky or they're not going to call things unless they are incredibly, incredibly egregious, then is it better odds to actually go for 2? And if I'm the team they're going for 2 on, why not foul? Because what's the worst that can happen? They move 1 yard ahead as opposed to like being on the 1 yard line as opposed to being on the 2 yard line. So I would know as a competitive advantage to just say, okay, I'm just going to foul. And if they don't call it, I win the game. And if they do call it, I get another shot. And they're only at the 1 yard line because realistically, like, I know they probably feel a lot more comfortable, the team going for a QB sneak or a run in that 1 yard line range as opposed to the 2 yard line. But to me, just taking the chance of like, all right, I'm going to hold this guy as much as possible without it being super obvious, and they're going to throw the ball to him, or say they're not going to throw to Jamar Chase because I'm holding him and it's on the other side of the field of that where he's looking, but I know for sure that their best player ain't getting this ball right now, then I'm going to do it. And it's like, okay, I mean, if I'm the Ravens, I'm happy. It's your job to win games. I'm not caring about what the Bengals fans think about or what the NFL fans think about. They ain't paying my salary. They ain't feeding my children. They ain't doing anything except complaining or watching or cheering. Yes, they provide for us in some way, but also at the same time, like, I got to win games to keep my job. So that's what I'm going to do. But then the question becomes, as people who watch the NFL or fans of the NFL, the question becomes, do I really want games to come out, like the result to come out this way? Do I really want it to impact the game in this way? And to me, the answer is no. So I think the problem is the consistency. But on the on the other hand, I'm not like really pro making like reffing automated or digitalized or technology based, whatever you want to call it, like AI or having cameras constantly watching and calling that. I like the human aspect of it and it not being perfect, but also at the same time, like, I think the biggest thing that I would change is the consistency of the rule calling at any given moment. That's the big thing. I can forgive a little bit of inconsistency. I can forgive imperfection, but I can't forgive hypocrisy, right? If that's what we want to call it, hypocrisy. So to me, it's hypocritical to be like, oh, I'm going to call this on 1st and 10 with 10 minutes left in the first quarter, but I'm not going to call it with 1 second left in the fourth quarter. That's not how rules work. That's not how rules work in any aspect of life. So I would say that's definitely not something I would be pro. So I think we really need to make changes and really focus on what really matters. So kind of just looking at the games for this week, or from this week rather, I think just some that interest me of like, man, I really feel for Tracy from the Giants, man. Just like fumbling in the overtime, dude, as a rookie. Like, he was bawling his eyes out. My wife has him in fantasy, and she just gets like really like, she just likes people for very wholesome reasons, but like that we're not used to, like as football watchers, where we're like so competitive. But she's like, oh, he's crying. Like, this meant a lot to him. Or, oh, Bryce Young got drafted to a bad team, and I feel bad for him, and he got benched. And like, she actually has like human empathy for them, and I'm just like, I want to win. So, or I want my fantasy team to do good. So, I guess when like NFL players complain about that, I get it. But also at the same time, it's like the NFL is so much bigger than an individual. So you got to kind of just take it for what it is. And a lot of times these fan bases are going to be a lot more loyal to their team than these players. So you just got to remember, like, you can't take it personal if you're a player. But no, I'm glad Carolina gets a win over the Giants. I think Bryce Young needed that. And I think, like, come on, Bryce Young. Like, I'm starting to be a Bryce Young fan for this aspect. And I think it was crazy that he was taken first overall. I really do. Like, I had him as a mid first round grade. So to me, this is how I grade quarterbacks. I grade them in the aspect. Well, first of all, let me say this. I don't believe drafting a quarterback in the second round as a principle. Obviously, if you are in the first round and you don't draft a quarterback because you had someone higher, or like say you don't need one, but then like you think the best one in the draft is in the second round and you take him just because he's available, that's different. But let me explain what I mean. So to me, if you think someone is the right fit to be your franchise quarterback or to be your starting quarterback moving forward, I think he should be taken in the first round. Obviously, there's certain degrees of belief, but if you believe in them enough within their rookie contract, to me, I look at it like, okay, I'm going to take them in the first round. Then it becomes a matter of like, within the first round, where do I take them, right? But to me, I draft them in the first round because of the fifth-year option and being able to extend them for an extra year without having to pay them the enormous, ridiculous salary that NFL quarterbacks are being paid in conjunction or in comparison to the rest of their team and the percentage of their salary cap. It makes it incredibly hard to win when you're paying a quarterback top money if he is not himself making up for other deficiencies that you have within your team, which many quarterbacks do not do that. So then, taking a quarterback in the second round, you're almost valuing them as high as a first round pick, but you're saying that I'm willing to risk that 5th year, which to me does not make sense. So the next round I would take a quarterback is a 3rd round pick, which to me still has the potential to be a starter, but the belief isn't as high, and I'm not putting as much of an investment into them as the future quarterback. So when I look at, where would I take a quarterback within the first round? I'll just kind of explain a recent draft class. So we've got, what was it? This year's 2024, so 2023 draft class. So we had Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis were the main guys that were talked about, those main 4. I had first round grades on all 4 of them. Not because I believed in all of them entirely, but I saw why you would take someone. So the way I had it ranked, I had Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud as top 5 grades. To me, they were kind of a 1A and a 1B. The reason Anthony Richardson for me, which right now I look stupid, but I don't think I'll look stupid later on with the Anthony Richardson aspect of it. The reason I had Anthony Richardson at 1A was because he had more potential. He has way more physical potential than CJ Stroud, but CJ Stroud's almost the flip side. So Anthony Richardson was like, okay, this is obviously a little different, but this Cam Newton type athlete. But can he put it together in terms of playing the quarterback position? Then you have CJ Stroud, who is an amazing quarterback, but does he have the athleticism to play within the NFL? Obviously, these were questions that needed to be asked between these two players. Obviously, CJ Stroud still is an amazing quarterback, and he does have the athleticism to play in the NFL. You can see that now. You can see him scramble. That was kind of the biggest question, like, can he scramble? But to me, he kind of reminded me of Joe Burrow with a little bit, maybe like 70-80% of Joe Burrow's scrambling ability. But then you look at Anthony Richardson, it's like, dude can run like a 4.3. He's just a giant. He can flick the ball 60 yards with like the flick of his wrist. And to me, he showed more accuracy than I thought in comparison to how people were talking about him. So I had those two as like top 5 grades, and Anthony Richardson 1A, CJ Stroud 1B. Then we get into Bryce Young. His size and stature is concerning. It is. Again, someone who is very good at the position and knows how to play the position, but does he have the physical gifts to play the quarterback position in the NFL? And to me, the answer is yes, but it is limited. Bryce Young needed to go to someone like Detroit, to Minnesota in some extent, to Green Bay, to Philadelphia, to obviously with the other quarterbacks not in mind, but the aspect of you have a full-blown team around them, a great offensive line. He needs pieces. He's not going to carry you. So it makes sense to draft him in the first round if you believe in his ability to play quarterback, but you know that he's not going to win you a Super Bowl making $50 million a year. So that extra 5th-year option is very crucial for him. So I had him as a mid-first round grade. I'm like, if a solid roster with the right pieces on offense, especially on the offensive line, can grab him, start him in year 1 or year 2, start to build, use the extra cap space to build an elite defense, then you say, wow, this is an amazing story for Bryce Young, kind of like a forgot his name. Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. But he played for like the Bills. I think he was left-handed. He's just really short quarterback. You have someone like that maybe he can make a run or even win you a Super Bowl because he's just playing the position the right way and he's not making mistakes. So that's why you have a mid first round grade, or I had a mid first round grade on him. Will Levis, I had a late first round grade on him. I did not love him. I think he is more of an athlete than a quarterback. He makes a lot of dumb decisions, but he flashes things. He flashes his ability. But the difference between him and Anthony Richardson is that his high-end ability is not near what Anthony Richardson's is. So that's kind of the difference. So when you're the Titans and you probably wanted to take him in the late first round if you had an extra pick, but you took him a few picks later, that's fine. But Will Levis to me was like, all right, I don't think he's bad enough where I'd take him in the third round, but he's not good enough to go any higher than like the absolute end of like the late first round. So for example, like when the Vikings took Teddy at 32 when they traded up, or when the Ravens traded up for Lamar Jackson at 32, like that kind of situation of like, all right, I'm at the top of the second round and I drafted my favorite player at the top of the first round. So I'm going to circle back and try to trade up to get in the late first round and kind of get a quarterback I believe in. Can take a few years to develop him. I'm not making like a huge investment. And because I have that fifth year option, I can actually take the time to develop him. So say, for example, Will Levis sat for 3 years, which he's already not doing, but he's kind of being thrown into the fire right now with not a lot of support around him. But say he pulls a Jordan Love where he sits for 3 years and then behind someone really good and a really talented offensive staff, then you can see, oh my gosh, this investment was worth it. He can maybe be the guy who makes $50 million a year and gets us to the Super Bowl off of his ability. But just the high-end potential wasn't the same. So that's how I kind of read quarterbacks. And for Bryce Young to go that high at 1, I mean, kind of just circling around, for him to go 1 was the worst possible thing. I mean, obviously, it's great for him. It's great that it happened as a moment in his life, and I'm sure he's very grateful and feels very blessed. But obviously, it's just a terrible situation to be in terms of a support system. And I mean, Kevin O'Connell said this recently where he said, I believe teams fail quarterbacks or young quarterbacks before young quarterbacks fail teams most of the time. Something along those lines. And I totally agree. I mean, you have the greatest quarterback of all time talking about it all the time. Tom Brady saying people aren't, when they go to college, they're not a part of a program anymore. They're just players. They don't learn. They don't take the time to learn. And especially when they get into the NFL, they don't take time to learn. So it's really about, I mean, it's really plastic in a way, you know? It's who's the flashiest. But again, like, that's not what real football is about. And as long as football isn't flag football as much as they try to make it that, which as much as they try to push flag football or little girls playing football or, you know, making NFL football a global sport and in the Olympics, like, it's not that. People aren't going to watch that. That's not what Americans love. That's not what even the world will love if they try to make it global. So you need trench play. You need elite play in the trenches, and you need to be able to run the football or stop the run. I hate to sound like an old school guy. Even as a 25-year-old, I hate to sound like a grouch, but that's what wins. Even look at the Chiefs. Andy Reid is known for being a elite offensive line guru. They have elite offensive line play. And what happened when they didn't have elite offensive line play? They lost to the Bucs in the playoffs. And even on the other side, they have Chris Jones. And they would get Frank Clark. And they knew the importance of the trenches and pass rush and running the ball. And even with like Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, they didn't win the Super Bowl. They did not win the Super Bowl when Mahomes was throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. It's when they recognized read option, screen passes, which are basically pass runs. Passes that become runs are basically runs. So it just has a twist to it. So at the end of the day, like, you just have to realize if you're building a team, like, that's how you're going to win. Look at the 49ers. That's why they're always successful. That's why the Cowboys are at least a little relevant. That's why the Eagles are always relevant nowadays, unfortunately. But that's what happens. That's the most important aspect of playing football. Look at the Lions. The Lions came out of the fire 0-16. Terrible seasons. They had Matthew Stafford, who is still showing to this day he's one of the elite quarterbacks of this generation without all of the accolades. Yes, he has a Super Bowl, but he is still underrated. Like, you look at, who was it? CJ Stroud said in a podcast, like, he doesn't study Aaron Rodgers. He studies Matthew Stafford. And he made the argument that if Matthew Stafford was in Aaron's position, he probably would have more Super Bowls. And I don't think that's that crazy to say. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, but, like, I don't think that's that crazy to say. So the Lions had one of the most talented quarterbacks in a generation. They had probably the most talented wide receiver in a generation. And what happened? They couldn't do anything. They had Ndamukong Suh, but it wasn't until they had an elite offensive line, the ability to run the ball, an elite defensive line player in Aiden Hutchinson, and the ability to stop the run. That's when they became the team they are today. It doesn't matter if Jared Goff throws 80% completion percentage. It doesn't matter if Amon-Ra St. Brown's doing the stupid headstand thing. It doesn't matter if Sam Laporte is doing terrible or great, for my case. It's always going to be about running the ball with David Montgomery and having a few explosive plays with Jahmyr Gibbs. And it's going to be Alex Anzalone's Thor-looking self stopping the run. And Malcolm Rodriguez punching the ball out. And being just hard-nosed football, filling the gap, meeting people in the hole, and just breaking them down. This is going to be weird. But, yeah, so that's kind of how I look at it. And even the Packers, I mean, this is going to turn into a whole NFC North rant as a Vikings fan, which I'm definitely not going to make this podcast all about the NFC North. I will try my best not to. But perfect example. And the things that bugs me about the Vikings is that they don't prioritize the defensive line as much as they do the offensive line. And even then, the interior offensive line is kind of shaky. And I would love to see them invest more in that aspect. But the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears and their fans frustrate me. So let me start with the team, or the reason that probably frustrates me a little less is the Bears. The Bears themselves. Because to me, what's frustrating about them is they do this all the time. Right? When they had Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Matt Forte, and an elite defense, they know how to make a defense. They know how to get a quarterback. They know how to get skill positions. But what is always the struggle? The offensive line is always their struggle. So you have a pretty good defense. You have a top 10 caliber defense. You sign players for a lot of money. You have great corners. Even Tyreek Stevenson, who needs to get his ego checked for sure, but he knows how to play football. You definitely have Jalen Johnson, who I loved coming out of the draft and actually fell more than I thought he should. But look where he is today. One stroke for my ego there. But when you look at their offensive line in comparison to their weapons, so you've got Keenan Allen, career 100-plus catch guy, always open. He's 7'11", always open. You have DJ Moore, who's a big play threat and also a screen pass, just can bust it open for 98 yards. Then you have Rome Odunze, who's a great 50-50 ball catcher, can stretch the field, but he's a rookie, so it's good that he's taking a little bit of time behind some very veteran wide receivers. You have a solid Cole Kmet tight end, or tight end in Cole Kmet. Then you have the offensive line. Oh, I'm sorry. You have Caleb Williams, who is an amazing talent, who I believe should have been drafted that high despite character concerns, obviously. Um, nothing about him is bad, but I just like he's not doing anything illegal or immoral, but to me to just like act the way he does and just it's just I mean call me mean but or call me rude, but just like it's hard for me to imagine grown men in their 30s or late 20s watching a 22-year-old walk in with painted nails and just like telling them what to do. And he's running around, doesn't understand plays as well because he's a rookie, doesn't understand the game as well. And you could see it in his college tape. He didn't do great within the structure of a play. He had his moments, and obviously he's talented, but he would rather just run around everywhere and bomb at 60 yards. So with that, by the way he plays, it kind of shows me that he thinks he's better than everybody. But also off the field, it's like clearly this guy isn't very mature. He's trying to make things about himself. And to me, for him to be the leader of your locker room, that's just hard in general. But then, okay, so you have DeAndre Swift, who to me is a very overrated running back. He's very talented, but he lacks vision. I think if the Lions, a team that prioritizes the run as much as they do, let him go to Philadelphia the way that they did, I don't think he would be that, like, I don't think they think he's that great of a runner. Obviously, there's injury concerns, which he's kind of quieted down over the past few years. But to me, is like, he's got to have a great offensive line to be putting up the numbers that he did. And he's more of like a screen pass, kind of get open in open space kind of guy. I don't think he's going to have really good vision out of the line of scrimmage. So when you already have that, and then your offensive line is subpar, especially in the pass blocking, and then you have a rookie quarterback scrambling around, making the angles for his offensive line harder to protect, that's going to make a under or below average offensive line struggle even more. Because if I'm standing in the pocket, which is when they hike the ball, the offensive line almost make a half circle around the quarterback to protect all angles around him, hence making a pocket and making a clean pocket for him, not interrupted by defenders. But when a quarterback backs up 7 steps, then it becomes almost like a ice cream cone shaped pocket. Then it's a harder angle for offensive line who already are less talented on average and around the league than most defensive pass rushers or defensive players. That's going to make it even harder for them. So there's where a lot of the struggle begins. However, what frustrates me the most about the Bears situation is the Bears fans and expectations. Yes, he's the first overall pick. Yes, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift. However, rookie quarterback. They are sitting at 4-5 in the best division in football with a rookie quarterback. And you are calling for the firing of the head coach. Do I think that Eberflus is the best offensive coach there is out there? No. But do I think he's a proven defensive coach and a solid person? I've actually met him in person. I saw him at a conference. He seems like a pretty stand-up guy. And he knows how to coach defense. And if you want to disagree with just sort of the viewpoint and the plan that the Bears are taking, because I think a lot of teams would rather have an offensive coach with their star quarterback, yes. But also, the best thing that can help a starting quarterback as a rookie is probably a good defense and a good run game, which they have a good defense, but they don't have a great run game because of their offensive line. So to me, yes, you can argue, okay, like they need to coach better, and they have Darnell Wright, who was taken in the first round, who I really like coming out, and they have white hair, and they've got a few different offensive linemen that you can work with. Yes, you can argue that they can coach them up better. But to me, it's like, how does that not become a GM problem? How's that not a talent problem? And for Bears fans to just fall for it and think, I mean, I know they started out 4-2, but I mean, sitting at 4-5 with a rookie quarterback, like how many teams are going to be that mad? Do you think the Steelers would be mad? Do you think the Packers would be mad? Do you think the 49ers would be mad? Do you think the Patriots would be mad? Do you think any team with historic greatness or culture, do you think any of them would be mad sitting at 4-5 with a rookie quarterback? Do I think they'd be ecstatic? No. But do I think that it's probably not a bad spot to be in? I think it's not a bad spot to be in. So to sit here and call for your head coach to be fired, like, that's just whack, bro. That's just so whack. I think it's just so unrealistic, and this is why, as Bears fans and as the Bears in general, this is why you don't make a winning team. Because what happens? You're not patient enough to let your team actually build a winning team. Then you put all the pressure on the stars that they do get, because it is a big market, and Chicago does make big moves, and they do have a decent amount of money. Then you put all the pressure on a few people and a few players. Then you learn, because football is a team sport, it is the ultimate team sport, you realize that a few people cannot be the only reason or the main reason that a team wins, and it takes all 53 players or 11 people on one team at once to win, then you're going to fail. It's going to fail. So you keep repeating this cycle. You just keep consistently repeating this cycle. And this is what somewhat bothers me about the Vikings, because it's like, yes, I love Justin Jefferson. He's amazing. He helps every quarterback more, no matter who the quarterback is, but it's like $30 million on a wide receiver is kind of crazy. But we'll see. You know, there's examples. There's like Jerry Rice, there's Julio Jones, there's to some extent Antonio Brown, there's Deebo Samuel, there's Tyreek Hill. I mean, there's definitely been great wide receivers that help win the Super Bowl and are a big part of winning a Super Bowl. But I think the trenches really help everyone be who they are. The offensive line and the defensive line help everyone else on the team truly be themselves, in the aspect of are able to show off the gifts that they have been given by God and the gifts that they display on the football field. And without them, we wouldn't have people like DeAndre Swift or Caleb Williams, or like, forgive me for being preachy or just not fun about it. I'm not talking about the quarterback or the wide receiver or the running back as much, but at the end of the day, the men who do the real work, the construction workers, the plumbers, the groundskeepers, the coal miners, back in the day, the coal miners, the people who do the real work that help society move and help people who want to do podcasts, who want to, be influencers, the people who are CEOs, those people can't thrive without those other people. And those people can thrive without those other people, without the CEOs, without the influencers, without the podcasters. Like, those are the real people that do the dirty work. And you realize very quickly that there's a lot of talented players in the NFL, and a lot of it is about how things line up in their situation, the timing, the belief in the player, and wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks can't be who, or tight ends cannot be who they are most of the time, 95% of the time, without the structure of the team and the offensive line. So that's why I think the Bears are going to fail. And I could sit here and eat my crow one day, but I think this is proof that over time this will not end well. And I think players like Caleb Williams, who is on the verge of generational type of talent, I think they come in and think, well, I'll be the one to do it. I'm so great. I've got so much talent. I'm so smart. I'm so hardworking that I can do it. But let me tell you something. That is not what football is about. That's not what it's about. Football is the ultimate team sport. And the ones that realize that are the ones who win. Tom Brady did it. Joe Montana did it. And let me say this. Patrick Mahomes does it. As much as you want to hate on him, as much as he has sort of this reputation or the idea about him is the 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, running around the field, sidearm, left arm throws, just scrambling. Yes, he's incredibly, incredibly talented. And he did play football that way. However, did he win that way? No, he did not. And you know how he won? Screen pass to Sammy Watkins. Screen pass to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Screen pass to, Xavier Worthy. It's the dinking and dunking. It's the running the ball to Kareem Hunt. It's running the ball to Isaiah Pacheco. Letting the defense play. Picking your spots. That is how you win. That is why he needed this talent around him at first. Now you can give up someone like Tyreek Hill. Now you can give up Travis Kelce when he wants to go be Taylor Swift's boyfriend even more. Now you can give these things up. But you know who won't give up on the offensive line? That's Andy Reid. Because at the end of the day, those are the guys who win. Excuse me. But I just think moving forward, we need to realize that. And I think that'll be a theme on this podcast, because I think especially when I'm scouting players or looking at, the value of players, I'm really going to think of that and bring that up and keep that in mind. And kind of just a last topic. This is why Jayden Daniels is so great. I did not believe. Okay, first let me start with this. This is how I viewed Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels, incredibly gifted runner in the aspect of his quickness. He does have pretty good long speed, but it's his quickness and agility and cutting ability that is very great. He makes quick decisions. He has a very quick release. He has very good arm strength. But the problems were accuracy and touch, the slightness of his frame, and the college level offense that he was playing in. And to me, when he went to Washington, and I'm just going to call them the Redskins because they're going to go back there one day and we'll all be like, oh yeah, that was way better. The Commanders were dumb. But they're the Redskins, not the Commanders. That's lame. The reason I didn't think it would work with the Redskins is because I really didn't think he had a support system around him. I think I had him as like a top 12 grade. I was concerned about his ability to stay healthy because of his frame, aligned with the fact that he is a runner. And he also doesn't like to go down, as most runners don't, like Lamar and all those guys. But you see they get hurt because of it. But that's what you see, right? Like, you see the inaccuracies with the touch on the ball. You see the slight frame. You see, the RPOs or the screens or the easy crossing routes that his offense had. But then you realize it's like, oh gosh, like Washington has Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator. The guy known for having the most college-like offense in the NFL. And obviously, Jayden Daniels makes it work. Despite statistically a terrible offensive line. Terrible, especially in the pass protection. So you're really just like, wow, this guy is like even more talented than you thought. So if I were to change it now, I mean, I wouldn't change it, but like you realize he's more of like a top 10 talent or a top 5 talent even. But I think some of those things still reign true, and I think he will need to mature as a quarterback because those deficiencies in his frame and his knowledge of an NFL style offense and just like the lack of accuracy at times, those still are problems. He's not perfect, but his talent, the things that are good about him are great. They are great. And you're starting to see that on an NFL level because you can project. You can see how it looks against college teams and how they look in general. But until you see them on that NFL field and see how they move in comparison to grown men in the NFL for a few years, you won't really know who they are. But you see like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I think a big part of it is Cliff Kingsbury, and we'll see how much he starts to fall on the tail end of things like he does in the playoffs typically or at the end of the year because teams figure him out. Like I'm sure he'll make like a few adjustments here and there with specific players or caters certain things, but at the end of the day, it is a very simple offense, and I think that's why people like Jayden Daniels can thrive as quickly as they do, like him. So I just think that's where we're at with it, and only time will tell. But again, when we're talking about, offensive line needs to be great and running game, which Brian Robinson's is pretty good, but it's not great. That support system, when you see someone overcome that support system, that's a sign that, they're going to be a great quarterback or it's luck. But at the end of the day, Washington's not winning a Super Bowl. I mean, I could be wrong, but that would be an insane statistical anomaly. So I just look at it like that. And I think time shows, wisdom shows that like without those support systems, he's not going to win one. But can he be the guy to overcome those things? If there's deficiencies, it's seeming like he is. But if he does have those things, kind of takes a step back and lets go of the reins like Mahomes did, and doesn't try to be Superman all the time as he matures and can get real help around him, he's going to be dangerous. He's going to be really dangerous. And he already is dangerous. And anytime the Redskins are on, I'm about to watch. For real. And it's because of the grit and the way they play. And the fact that Dan Quinn's a head coach again makes me really happy. I'm not going to lie. I really liked him in Atlanta. I think that Super Bowl loss was so rough. But, you can just tell that he's a player's coach, and his players play hard for him. And I believe he really believes in empowering his players. And I think at the end of the day, Kingsbury, you can say what you want about him. And you can say, like, hey, he falls off at the end. And who knows, it might not work out again. The same thing might happen again, and he might not win. But the thing you can't say about Dan Quinn is he doesn't get guys or coaches that try their best to make the best out, like, get the best out of their players. And I think at this juncture in Jayden Daniels' career, the start of his career, I think Cliff Kingsbury is probably the perfect offensive coordinator for him. Will I say that 6 years from now? Probably not. Probably not. But it's all up to Jayden Daniels. Because if Kingsbury still is the perfect coordinator for him 6 years from now, that's a Jayden Daniels problem. That means that he ain't growing. Or it means Kingsbury really grew. But, I mean, coaches, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like players grow more than coaches do once you reach that level. Especially because the age that these players are at and how much goes on in your life and maturity happens, hopefully for most of us, by when you're 21 to 30, right? Or 21 to 40 or 35, whatever you want, however long you play. But if you're already a coach, you're already in your 30s or 40s, 50s, 60s, and etc. Like, I mean, unless you're a special kind of person, you ain't changing that much. So I'm excited to see what Jayden Daniels does. And I think the NFL loves statistical anomalies and people who do things that have never been done before. And I do as well. But we'll see what reigns true in the end. And let's see how Jayden Daniels goes. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Jesus loves you. I'm out.